There are a few people who do need to get away for a couple of reasons, and so we're going to kick off with a farewell before we begin. Richard, where are you? Richard Sill? Cool. Alrighty. So what I should... yeah, well, no, but what I did want to do whilst we're waiting for the ministers is there's a wee bit of housekeeping that I just want to do. And by way of a thank you as much as anything, we do have a live stream here, so just to be aware that we are very popular. You're all film stars today. Thank you very much to the team at Rangai for that, so that our wider community can watch the meeting. One person that can't join us this afternoon, and somebody I particularly wanted to say thank you to, was Matt Cairns from the Trust Tairāwhiti. We will kick off with the formal meeting in a moment, but just while we've got the chance, and whilst we're waiting on the ministers, Richard, I don't know if you want to touch on what has happened at the Trust and what you've got planned going forward, but Matt was a key player in the days immediately post the cyclone and all those rain events that carried on afterwards. He basically, I think a lot of you would have seen the survey the impact survey that was put out around the damage that occurred. That survey, basically, that was built from scratch by Matt Cairns of Trust Tairāwhiti. We built that survey on a scrap of paper on the bonnet of a car outside the Gisborne District Council, Matt and I. So it was extraordinary. He would show up any hour of the day, he had his kids to look after amongst other things and everything else that was going on, and he did that pretty much single-handedly for us for agriculture. So Richard, do you want to just touch on Matt? And amongst us, I just want to say a huge thank you to Matt, because we do owe him a lot.
Thank you. I'm slightly hoarse. I've actually just come from a tourism conference down in Christchurch, so a couple of late nights. But Matt actually led our tourism team and has led our tourism team for the last couple of years, and so he's moving on to a new role with Surf Lifesaving New Zealand, national role. So well done him. He will be staying in Gisborne, which is exciting. But during the cyclone, or in the very early days of the cyclone, tourism probably wasn't doing very much, and so Matt jumped across to my team. I look after the Economic Development Agency. He was a massive support, as Sandra outlined, in those early days around standing a lot of the information collection. We got a business hub stood up down by the boat ramp when we got one of the first Starlinks, thankfully, that were able to come into the region. So we're able to get a whole bunch of you guys, payroll done, creditors paid, to the extent we could, keeping the economy going. So he was very instrumental in those early days, and he subsequently went back into the tourism team as cruise ships returned and other bits and pieces. But yeah, I guess a big thanks to Matt as he goes into the new chapter.
So Matt, if you're listening, this is for you. Thank you very much. Just give us 5 moments and we'll be right with you.
Tis.
Work? Now it is.
Yep.
Can you hear that?
You need to stay close to it.
Is that better?
Yeah, I can hear.
Good? Or not? Don't know yet. Yep, good. Right. Okay.
Oh, there we go. Kia ora everyone, welcome. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Riet Stoltz. I'm the Mayor at the Gisborne District Council. Lovely to see you here today. Fantastic that it's under a little bit better than when we last saw each other maybe 8 weeks ago. Thank you also to Sandra for inviting us. I do want to acknowledge Minister Kiri Allen here and her colleague Minister Hinare is on his way, so we'll hear from them a little bit later. But what we thought we would quickly do is just give you an update on what has happened road-wise, what's happening silt-wise, what funding is available to you, what funding is available to council, just from the roading and the silt funding, and David Wilson will speak a little bit more about that. I've got my lovely team here. Dallas is our welfare support, and then Dave and Darren will talk about our roads and our silt situation. Just before I hand over to Dave, I just want to acknowledge everyone. It's been a very tough time. Yeah, we'll pass it in. It's been a very, very tough time. There's a lot happening in our region. There are a lot of people still hurting. We are helping where we can. We're still asking, especially for welfare and mental health support, people to please reach out. It is a tough time, and we need to acknowledge it and do the best we can to get there together in the end. So thank you for your patience also with the Gisborne District Council. Any issues, shout out. But without further ado, you are here to hear about roads and silt and stuff like that. So I'm going to pass over to David Wilson. When we are finished, we'll pass over to the ministers who will then be able to take questions as well. We're happy to take questions, shout it out at us, but without further ado, thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Rhett, and kia ora tātou. So I think my name's Dave Wilson. I'm the Director of Lifelines at Council, so roads, water, civil defence and a few other things. So on the roads, we know that we've still got a lot of work to do, and our teams are pretty much maxed out to capacity, from our contractors right through to our teams as well. Where we're sitting at the moment is we're trying to get everything as close as we can open and ready for winter, as long as we've got days like today where we can keep operating. So across the district, there's about 80 teams that are working across the 2,000 k's of roads that we've got, working on things like from water tabling and drainage, which is our biggest focus at the moment, is to try and get as many of the culverts unblocked that we can, try and get as much drainage done that we can as well. We're still in response mode when it comes to that. So we still have multiple communities that are cut off. We still have areas where we don't have bridges. We have areas where we're still struggling and working with farmers to get stock out as well, particularly this late in the season. And we all know what happens this late in the season if you're carrying too much stock. So we're really concerned, and that's where our priority is at the moment, is around stock movements and people welfare. So for example, up at Makarika up the coast, we've got 30 families up there. The bridge, we're struggling to be able to get them across because you can't even walk on it. It's not safe enough. Next week, hopefully, we'll be able to have that, but it means they're using a forward crossing. We also know here we've got whānau that are using dinghies to cross, all of those things. So that's where a lot of our focus and resources at the moment. If they're not working on those critical things, they're doing things like water tabling. So the water tabling's the focus at the moment, culverts, as I said, digging out drainage. We have a plan to try and work through the whole district and blow all the drains out as we go into winter. As we start to make some headway on that, then you'll see us start putting metal down on the roads as well. So we know we haven't put metal on because we're busy trying to open up roads and be able to get the drainage ready to put metal down on. There is a plan for the metling coming out, and completely accept we haven't been communicating that plan. Part of why we haven't is because it's literally changing daily with us as we move resources around and as things still keep moving across the district. So the team have got it to a stage where within the next week we'll be able to start talking about what roads will be getting what treatments in the coming months, and all of it comes with the caveat weather permitting, because we're not going to get days like this much longer going forward. For some areas, we've run out of season, and I know that that's frustrating for you to hear, but we haven't been able to do the chip sealing that we wanted to do this year. We haven't been able to do the asphalting either. So we've been able to do some parts, but what happens is this time of year, basically the ground conditions, it's too cold. We know that it won't hold if we put it on, or it'll just come flying out. Frustrating for us, frustrating for you, because you're just watching us throwing good money after bad. So the plan is, for some of those areas, we'll do some treatments, but we'll let you know, because they're going to be sacrificial ones that we know won't hold through winter, but they're to try and hold the road as best that we can. For other areas, you may see us rip the tar seal up and revert it to gravel. What that means is we can't treat what's underneath anymore because the water table's too high. For a lot of places, particularly on the Poverty Bay Flats, the water table's way too high, has been for a long time as well. The good news that we do have, though, is that we are still working through with the water tabling and the funding that we have. We have been working really closely with NZTA to make sure that we do have funding for the work that we've got going out. So that is working closely with them, but we still don't know what the long-term fixes look like for us. So for some of the bridges, the big dropouts, culverts, we're still undertaking what the fix is, trying to get an engineered fix for what it'll be, and then also finding out what funding we've actually got available. Can we do a short-term fix, a medium-term fix, or can we do a long-term fix? I think some people will be aware, for example, up at the Tinoroso Bluffs, for example, we're looking at a different option up there as to how we can actually look after that road going forward so that we can actually go around the bluffs into the future. That's all subject to funding and a whole lot of other things, but that's where we want to try and do some game-changing things rather than just trying to repair the bluffs again, because we know they'll fall down again. The bit that I am happy to talk about is, you may or may not have seen this week, we had $38 million announced for our region for when it comes to sediment and debris cleanup. So I want to kind of talk about what that means at a high level, and hopefully not stealing Minister Allen's thunder around talking about good news. But with the money that we've got, a lot of that is being prioritised for our region to clean up the waterways, clean up issues where we know we have debris and sediment right through them. So for us, we're working through that plan. We only got the funding announced on Monday. We only signed it off yesterday. The plan is for us to go through, for example, the Poverty Bay Flats, the drainage districts through there, and dig out all of the drains on the Poverty Bay Flats to return them back to the level of service they're supposed to be. So we've got the funding, we're now pulling together the plan, and we'll need to work with a lot of you in this room around what we're going to do with that cleanup and what it looks like. So a lot of our silt cleanup and a lot of the slash cleanup, we're looking to partner with you around what we do with that. So for slash, for example, we've got the $32 million that we'll be looking to administer for council. That's to clean up waterways, clean up sediment across residential properties, across rivers, across streams where we know we've got blockages, and we're working through, and we'll be coming out to look to who we can partner with to deliver that funding to benefit the region. But a lot of that, we're looking at bringing some kit into town to help shred a lot of the wood waste that's hung up in our waterways, to get rid of it before it hits bridges, but also get rid of the blockages before they create more damage. So for example, we've ordered a shredder to come up. It can do 220 tonne an hour and can take logs up to 1.2 metres wide. That's the sort of kit that we're looking at to clean up some of these waterways, particularly something like the Te Aroai. We want to get into there and clean up those willows, clean up all the slash in there. That's the sort of thing we're looking to bring into region to help do that. We'll need to work with you around what we do with that wood chip potentially, what we'll do with a lot of the silt, can we plough it back into paddocks, all of those kind of things. So we're working with you, well, we want to work with you going forward once we've got that funding and that plan put out, so we can actually start looking at what those options are. We all want the best return on investment for that. From the ministers right down to us, we want to make sure that wherever we're spending it, we get the best return possible, not just spending the money for the sake of spending the money. So we will be looking to work with you guys around what that looks like being rolled out. The other part we're working through is with the Department of Internal Affairs around the $7 million that's for commercial land. And so that's the money that was announced as well. A lot of that's to work with you around what it means for rural land that's been affected, how we can help with the silt clean-up, and working through what that funding like and that distribution looks like. So we're still working with the officials on what that's going to roll out and how we're going to roll that out as quickly as we can for region. But just quickly, that's the one where the first $40,000 is covered by the fund, and it's 50-50 matched up to $210,000 for cleaning up silt and debris off your land as well. And I'm happy to have a quick talk about that afterwards, but we're still working through what the detail of that plan looks like. We'll be letting you know as soon as we've got a plan for that and how that's going to be rolled out across the district. So a whole lot of work's coming, a whole lot is underway, but I know it's we're still weeks on, we're still trying to figure out a lot of these fixes, and some of them are not short-term fixes for this district. That's why we've got to take the time to figure out what it is that we're going to do and what's the best way possible for that. Darren, you're going to kill me for anything I've forgotten to say? Good, I've read the memo properly then. Minister, is anything you'd like to say? Do you,
Just briefly touched on the tiara on the willows there. There's been a bit of an issue with the rural things for a while. So are you saying that finally willows are going to be cleaned up so we don't have to see them again?
What we're saying for the tiara in particular is we want to go through there. And look, 100%, I've said it before, we haven't had the funding to maintain the tiara. Part of this is getting it back to a maintainable level. So there's a couple of parts for the tiara in particular, and I'm conscious that I haven't got all the landowners in the room here today, but what we'd like to be able to do is come out and talk about the tiara, about cleaning it out of those overgrown poplars, willows, the slash that are there, talk about what's left in there to maintain, but then also go back to the politicians at the council table and say, and this is what a maintenance budget looks like long-term going forward to ensure that that waterway is going to keep flowing at the same time. But this funding is to go in and clean it out, yes.
Landowners and the capitals have been paying rates specifically for maintenance tiara for a number of years. Has been overworked.
So part of the rates take for that catchment hasn't been enough and hasn't been able to keep up with it because it's been let go for far too long. So it's still far behind. Those trees have overtaken what the maintenance budgets were to take it. It's arguable whether or not we ever had enough money budgeted to be able to maintain that catchment properly.
Follow on what Craig was saying there too. We're in a rebuild phase here as well, and we need a level of confidence going forward that there's a management plan in place that's actually going to be action. Because we're, like Craig saying, we're paying rates what we thought was being action, and the severity and the impact of the flood and the cyclone could have been minimised, if not eliminated. And that's frustrating for a lot of farmers out in the area, growers. And so we need something from you guys to say that this, so I have enough level of confidence to go into investing and redeveloping, that this won't likely happen again. I know we can't say it won't be flooded because of the cyclone, but at least have a reasonable level of confidence that you guys are taking care of what you guys are responsible for, so I can do my life, responsible for.
Yeah, and look, it's a really good and valid point around we can clean it up once, but it doesn't matter if we're going to leave it for another 2, 3, 5 years and it'll be back in the same state. So what we're working at is it's not just the TRI, there's all of the catchment. We want to do a catchment by catchment approach, clean them up, get them to a manageable level, then implement a catchment plan to maintain those going forward and have real budgets attached to it with real work programs to this is how we maintain those catchments, not pretending that we're maintaining them when we know the land use has changed around them, we know that we've got more debris in those waterways, so how do we manage that ongoing going forward? And that's a huge part of what are the next steps once we get it back to a manageable level.
It's like an avenue where if locals are noticing that there has been slippage and a lack of activity on council part to do their clean-up work and all that sort of stuff, because one of the biggest frustrations I've noticed is that there's plenty of voices out there, saying what they need to say, but no one's listening. There's no avenue to actually get it through the council. We've had meetings with councillors, and even they're saying that you guys aren't listening. You guys aren't taking, you know what I mean? I know it's a frustrating situation for all, but when you're not being listened to and you're not being heard, that's where the frustration's born out, and unfortunately sometimes it can get overwhelming. So I think if there's an opportunity or an avenue or a complaint process or something to say, hey look, you guys are dropping the ball here, you know, because I'm sure everyone's seen David Clark's writing in the newspapers and all that sort of stuff. And for me personally, that becomes a frustrating point that the impact to me specifically, but also my neighbours, it could have been prevented or minimised at least anyway.
I think the key part of is the point you've touched on, which I 100% agree with. There's got to be transparency around that work program that's put in and accountability for it too. A lot of the time with the work we have on as council, it sits in a massive spreadsheet, which is a huge file, which is meaningless by the time it makes it out to the public or out to the community once you look at what's been done through. I think transparent reporting to the community and the councillors and accountability for us as staff with what we're spending on and why, and before the work programs are agreed, is the key part of going through and making sure it's really obvious if we haven't been able to see it, because you'll all know, have we done what we said we were going to do, and did we agree that that pump station upgrade was the priority, or the slash that was down in the creek was the priority. So really good point, and I think it's one of the key things we need to do going forward.
I mean, I appreciate that you guys have opened up to community involvement into those upgrades, because I think some of the pumps in particular probably aren't up to what is needed, particular silt and all that sort of stuff, just like COVID. And so, and I think if we get all that sorted, then I think we'll have the level of confidence to go back into growing our crops again and putting the money back into the land. So,
William.
Slightly, as you can see, I'm going to just get the microphone passed along. These good people are going to be around to ask questions as we move through, but we've got quite a number of speakers, so stay there, Your Worship, if you'd like to get up to speak. Dallas, and then our recovery sorry, I just wanted to keep this rolling along because so we can get big bogged down and not listen, not hear the others. So yeah, do excuse me.
Testing, it's working. Kia ora everybody, my name's Dallas and I'm the Group Welfare Manager in the Civil Defence team. That's my role during a response, but in business as usual, I'm the Emergency Management Advisor for Welfare. So Welfare works on what we call a cycle. We have a welfare coordination group that we meet regularly in peacetime, and we try and come up with plans. We meet regularly with each other. We try and anticipate what people or communities might need, and then when we go into a response, we sort of all come together. So the response that Cyclone Garrielle taught us a lot. We saw some gaps, we found some gaps, and we did our best to try and address them. The key thing that was really good for us was having those relationships that we'd built in peacetime. So Sandra was able to work really closely with Sandra, especially when everything got turned off. When the power got turned off, the data got turned off, the roads were blocked, the bridges were down, we were pretty much in the dark. We were able to use subject matter expertise, I suppose, for want of a better word, to help us understand where the black spots were and who was in there, and how we could reach out to them. So that worked really, really well. I would actually like to say thank you to Sandra and her team for the support that they provided us. And we are learning. So we're learning from that response. We're learning what we did well. We're learning what we didn't do well. And our main focus and aim is to do better so that we can provide as much support as we can. So I won't hold you up. I will pass you on to Darren. Thank you. Oh, yeah, so we do still have some communities that have limited or are still isolated, and we've got a sort of resupply plan for those people. And we are available to talk to if you want to, if anything happens in your area that's a little bit out of normal for you, which is probably actually what's happening for you every day at the moment, but you're more than welcome to ring and ask, and we will give some advice, and we'll do our best to connect you with the people that can provide support if it's not us, for welfare. think Sandra wants to add some more.
So basically what we're doing is building you your picture about what actually happened in some of those big faceless and nameless organisations. These people worked untold hours alongside our community, amongst our community, bearing in mind that most of them were also impacted as well. So our GDC team, I'm really proud of them. I know I'm an ex-councillor, so I'm probably slightly biased, but I was really proud of what was an extraordinarily difficult time handled by some pretty amazing people. So we're very lucky here. So thank you, Rihet. Please pass that on to the rest of your team. Do you want to wrap up?
No, just thank you. This is ongoing as we have our recovery office stood up. We have our first bid in with ministers. I'm proud to say we were the first region to get in there and make sure we're front of line to carry our community voice to the ministers and say this is what's needed. Our community is hurting. That's where we need support. There's no chance in hell we can do it alone, so we need you to walk alongside us. We will keep you updated. You will see press releases coming out. We're really, really trying to keep in the Gisborne Herald, on the council Facebook page, trying to get our communities to see where work is happening, what is being prioritised, what funding is available. As always, my office is open for you, sir. If you want to talk to someone about something that is not happening, please feel free to reach out directly. I make sure I do get back to people. So absolutely, our office is open. It's going to be a long journey. This is 2 to 5 years worth of recovery. So what we are asking from you is let us know if you need anything. Please be kind to our workers and our road workers. They are doing the best they can at this stage under really testing circumstances. But we're in it together. We'll get there in the end. Thanks a lot. And without further ado, I'm very proud to introduce Minister Kiritapu Allen, who has been fighting for us from day one. Unfortunately, she was cycloned in with us, so she had no other choice. She had to go there. She saw firsthand what happened. You guys were here when we were here last time. It's also a lovely honour and privilege to have Minister Pini Henare here today as well. Welcome, Minister. I saw you quickly on the plane this morning, and I'll catch up with you a little bit later. But without further ado, I'm going to hand over. We're going to evacuate the hot seats and leave the hot seats for you. Here we go.
Kia ora tātou, and thanks, Riet. Also, just Sandra, I just really want to acknowledge you because I know you're sort of running off the smell of an oily rag. We're talking about ways to fundraise for today, doing a bit of a hot dog sale at the front. But yeah, just there's a lot of people that are running around trying to do as much as they can off a little bit of love. So just me mihi ka tika kai a koe e te tuakana. Look, before I crack in and give a bit of an overlay over as to, I guess, it's 3 months on Sunday since Cyclone Garrielle came through, and obviously before that we had Cyclone Hale. I'll, in a couple of minutes or next, sort of step through what we've done as a government, but particularly focused on tai rāwhiti in those last 3 months, where we're at now, what the next steps will be in terms of the layers of support. But first, a part of our cyclone recovery, we all only had to look out the windows or look at any of the footage to see the inordinate amount of slash that was throughout the region. And we know that forestry, the impact of forestry, has played quite a large part in the way that our environs has responded through these multiple natural events over the last, well, several years now. Today, I'm really pleased that my colleague and friend, the Honourable Pini Henare, he's the Minister for Forestry, is here amongst us this afternoon. Earlier today, and Pini will speak to this, there was a report that was commissioned by government and was released really setting out some of the impacts of forestry and slash within our region, with some proposals and recommendations as to how we as a region, including Wairoa, what needs to be done. So, Minister Hinari, thank you for being amongst us. This is a good portion of some of our rural community here in Te Tairāwhiti, many of whom have a vested interest in the outcomes of the inquiry that you're responsible for. So I'll let you address the crew.
Kia ora everybody, and thank you for the opportunity. I do want to acknowledge my colleague here. Some people say it's a hoha, but actually she is constantly in her colleagues' ears about the challenges here in Te Tairāwhiti, right across from here all the way up to the north and even into the Hawke's Bay. So I want to acknowledge your staunch advocacy for the challenges that have been here. Today the report was released. Full disclosure, I received the report about the same time as everybody else. So the job now is we've accepted that report. With urgency, ministers will be meeting the first thing on Monday morning to discuss that report, to digest it. The report doesn't just look at the slash challenge, and I know it's aptly named the slash report, but it's actually called the land use report. And what that means is we don't just look at the slash, we look at how we utilize land into the future so that we stop slash into the future. So it's a pretty wide-ranging report. It has a large number of recommendations. Some of those recommendations are localized, whereby through council or through land use and land property owners, the way that they utilize their land in order to make sure it doesn't happen into the future. Other parts sit squarely with central government, where we utilize the likes of the resource management reform. We use other legislative tools to see how we can make sure that we can stop this happening into the future. The other part, which is predominantly where my responsibility sits with this particular report, is with the forestry sector. The report was very specific to Te Tairāwhiti and up into the Hawke's Bay, but this will have wider ramifications on forestry right across the country. So we've got quite a schedule to meet with those forestry owners and forestry operators up and down the country to make sure that the lessons, not just from the report, but that we've seen what we've seen across the weather events here and north, and even up into the far north, into Northland, don't repeat themselves into the future. So I look forward to actually coming back. I've already made a commitment to the people I've met with today to come back after government's considered that report. So that'll be probably in about 2 weeks' time. Next week is budget week. The following week you'll see myself and my colleague here on the road, here and on the ground, to come back to you to report back on a number of the considerations and opportunities the government will take with the report today. But look, thank you for your time today, and I suspect there might be a question or two, but I will hand back to my colleague. Kia ora tātou.
Oh, kia ora, Minister Hinari, and I do suspect there may be some questions which we can take from the crowd shortly. I think why I thought it might be useful just to combine Minister Hinari's report that he's received today alongside what we're doing with the cyclone recovery. So for those of you that haven't met, my name's Garrielle. I'm the Minister responsible for the cyclone recovery here in Te Tairāwhiti in the Bay of Plenty. Every region, one of the things that we decided when the cyclone hit, well, shortly thereafter when we were looking at the approach, was that there were several regions that were significantly impacted. We hadn't seen an event like this on that scale where there'd been such large-scale devastation, but also the devastation was quite localised to each region, and it was quite different in each region. So instead of taking what central government usually does, is we take a sort of a copy-paste model and roll it out, we decided we'd try to do something a little bit different given the nature and the size and the scale and the types of communities the cyclones impacted. So Northland, they've got their own approach. Hawke's Bay, it has its own approach. And Te Tairāwhiti, it's got its own approach again. You may have seen in the media a little bit about what's happening down in Hawke's Bay. They've kind of gone with quite a SERA model, made appointees. There's multiple localised councils that are feeding in, iwi feeding in terms of how they pull together their response plan. When I was here last time, one of the things that I said was we were going to do things a little bit different. It was a little bit more intimate, and it was almost based on the approach that was taken in Cyclone Bowler, plus a few additionalities that we'd learnt over the years since then. So one of the first things was that an independent cyclone recovery advisor was appointed for the region. That was a gentleman by the name of Te Rau Kupinga, who has a lot of experience both in central government but also up here in region in the primary sector and other sectors. And him, as well as Ngārimu Parata over here, who is one of the senior advisors to the Reserve Bank Governor. They have been essentially in region for the past couple of months, engaging with almost every sector and every different grouping of folks that's been impacted in some which way or the other. So when we first pulled together the model or the approach for the region, people from the horticulture sector, the agriculture sector, various different others that I'll get Ngārimu to speak to, but we kind of pointed various leads, and people went away to kind of pull together the costs at that really preliminary stage. I remember when we were here last night, I think you were all filling in surveys out the wazoo. Take those things, and then you would have seen a series of announcements as we tried to just fix some of the interim, free up some of the interim issues that we were seeing. So whether that was by the way of business support grants, we started out with 25 million, that ultimately got, in totality, I think we invested 75 million, of which 17.7 was invested in region. 877 applications were received. We decided to do that all locally through Trust Tairāwhiti, and I got to acknowledge them. They were the first to get all their cash out of the bank and process the applications the quickest across country. So don't know if anyone's still here from them, but they did comparatively to the rest of the country, they did a really incredible job for our region. So that was about 17 million went in there. You would have heard from council and others that there's been multiple investments. I'm not going to go into the dollar sum unless anybody wants to hear me rattle them all off, but whether it's been through SILT, through our roading network, both localised and through the state highway network. I've just driven around actually from Whakatane. I came over the Cape, came up through Apanui, Te Kaha, went up the top through Pōtaka, Hicks Bay and Te Araroa this morning, came down. I decided to video the entire road from about Te Araroa all the way to just south of Tukumaru. She's pretty rugged out there, but it is connected. That's something that we couldn't say this time 3 weeks ago. There's been roads that have been cut around, a significant amount of investment. Something that Minister Robertson, he gave a speech earlier this morning that outlines our approach for this budget. There is a real strong focus on resilience, recovery and resilience for this year's budget, focusing on regions like ours, the Hawke's Bay, Northland in particular. There's multiple challenges and opportunities for us. There is a large bill that's associated with the damage from the cyclones. It's estimated by Treasury as being somewhere between $9 billion and $14.5 billion. That's just in asset, let alone loss of earnings and all the other types of things that comes with it. That therefore presents some challenges for us as a government and for us as a country. Who pays for what, where and how? And I know through my discussions with probably many of you within this room, there's been, you'll see that things have gone pretty quiet in a little while in terms of who's coming to the table to pay what and how. I can use the example of growers. Growers nationally have come with a pitch to government for just shy of $1 billion for assistance, for example. So taking that example there, what the task has been for my colleague in particular, Grant Robertson, has been to work with banks, insurers, and us. We've all got a part to play in contributing to the costs. No one of us can do it in isolation, particularly so as you start to look at some, that's just one small area amongst a big pool. So that's been some of the challenges that we've been working through over the past 3 months. 1, collating the costs, what's the total damage. 2, filling the gaps, getting rid of the silt, chucking the houses on, trying to make sure that businesses aren't falling over by providing that stimulation as we've gone through. Now we're getting to kind of some of the rubber hits the road type issues. I said to Sandra, it's almost unfortunate timing this meeting because in just a couple of days, we are setting out the real kind of roadmap in terms of the role of government moving forward, what's been appropriated and how. What I will say is that it's across every single sector that you could possibly think of. There is a no, I would not even get into that. I was get in trouble. But yeah, so let me peel back. It's a significant investment in regions like ours to help us get us back on our feet. Does it go the full hog? Does government stump up with all the cash all at once? No, we can't. So we really have had to work hard to build those relationships with banks and insurance in particular to work out who does what. Yeah, I know. Hey, look, I was almost like, if my colleague wasn't here, I'd do it. Only a couple more days. But, you know, and after that as well, what I will say is that once all those decisions have come into the light, and will certainly be available to, I guess, engage more thoroughly and deeply. But I guess one of the things that has been presented, and after we have our opportunity to answer some questions from the floor, I will hand it over to Rena Kohere and to Ngāri Muparata, who can talk a little bit to the regional cyclone recovery plan, what they've done, to who they've engaged with, how they've done that, how they've thought about the various components that require support and the phases of what that looks like moving forward. So I just really want to acknowledge all of those that have been working hard to get something to central government. Like our Mayor, Riet Stoltz, just said at the when she was introducing us, is that Te Tairāwhiti was the first region to have a fully costed recovery plan. That means now it's churning through the Treasury beast. For anyone that's ever worked with central government, to go first is always best. So I just really want to acknowledge the region. We are a small region under inordinate stress, and it has, you know, it's a small council that has to do quite a lot of work. We've got 4 large iwi that have really contributed to that as well, plus all of our sectors. So when I received the product, I just was very grateful because it really did feel like a full product that had come from region. Before we hand the mic over to Ngārimu and to Rena, you may have some questions for my colleague Pieni Hinare with respect to forestry, or myself with respect to anything cyclone related. Otherwise, I'll hand it to the 2 other guys for cyclone recovery in more general form.
Mr. Hinare, Peter Andrew. I just read the report before about the land use one, and it makes some pretty, I'm just speaking from the point of view of pastoral farming, that background I suppose, and Māori, but it makes some pretty big walks around the future. Where, yeah, I suppose my question really is, what is the chance, I suppose, to, given, I suppose, the magnitude of some of the calls that have been made, what are the chances, I suppose, to have commonly input in the field, part of the process going forward?
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I want to be very clear that, you know, governments, my colleagues and I are yet to digest the report. There are a number of significantly big recommendations in that report. And I'll hand on heart say here that anything that involves the likes of the sector that you're in or forestry will have to come to the sector in order for us to continue to engage on. It won't be done without your input. So while the report's got a large number of recommendations, it's what does he call it? What's the name of it? Outrage to optimism. That's the bugger. So it's got quite a lot in it, and I can hand on heart say those questions won't be answered in Wellington. That just won't happen. It just can't. For our part, though, there are some legislative things that are already underway in the reform space, like the Resource Management Act it's already underway. The ETS review of the ETS, for example, is already underway. So those are the things that we'll be looking at in the first instance. But for the ongoing land use, that will only involve those who actually own and use the land, won't be made from Wellington Central. Minister Parker has been very clear to me on that as the Minister for the Environment.
One question going forward from what Peter raised is, we've got reports from 2018 when all the logs ended up on the beach in Tolliga, and nothing really has changed, and then prior to that we had trees come down on the Whare Raras where we lost the railway line. There was another report done. So I guess what assurance can you give us that this report is actually going to make any difference to this community? Because otherwise it's just been a waste of everybody's time and your time.
For those who are interested, in the late 1990s there was a huge flood in Northland where I come from, and logs washed out the Panguru Valley in Hokianga. And through the report that was produced after that, and working hand in hand with the Regional Council, now some 20 odd years, 30 years, oh geez, I'm getting old now, I was a young fellow working up there then, that hasn't happened anymore. And there was a whole heap of things that were clear in the report about riparian planting, farming land use, and the way that they've changed the farming land use regulations in and around that valley, that all contributed to the heavy rains that we've had recently. No flooding in Panguru. So I'm of the belief that with that in mind, the report, as well as the announcement that my colleague has already indicated for this Sunday, will show a clear urgency that we need this region and the Hawke's Bay back up on their feet. Productivity in this country is going like this because you're not up on your feet. So we're committed to it. You'll see in the announcement on Sunday by our colleague and off the back of this report. And the final thing to add to that is, I said I'd be back in a couple of weeks' time. We've all got to hold our feet to the fire, whether it's the central government, whether it's local government, or whether it's local community. It's our job to do that. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time to engage, to start getting more feedback and make sure that we are heading in the right direction, like Renee Gaya said.
What's the commitment if election year comes and you get the boot and another party jumps in? What's the commitment to, right across the board, to stay firm to your plan, or someone else comes in and they decide to change the code of it?
Yeah, so that's the thing, I guess. I mean, that's one of the things. Well, you've got a really good report that has some really clear recommendations. Obviously, we've got to all form views on that. But we can stand up and say what we will do with respect to those recommendations. Whether we get the opportunity to roll those over was ultimately a decision for voters. I think, though, and that's just part of the political reality that we all operate in. One of the things I think that's pretty important about our region, though, is that regardless of which side of the aisle you sit on, we can all look outside and see that there is a significant issue for our community that's going to require all parts of our community to play a bit of a part in responding to. So whether that's, you know, the blue boys or the red gals or the boys and gals, whoever it is, I don't think that there is, in my personal view, is I don't think that there is an appetite to do nothing. There is an appetite within our communities, which is why you'll see two ministers sitting here wanting to address it straight away, which is why you'll hear that we want to come back straight away, because, and why the timeframes around that independent ministerial report was so confined to get some real pragmatic recommendations and options, because we need to do something. Because yeah, we were all here in 2018, we were all here in 2020. We've seen this. It's just not acceptable for us in our region.
You know, there's countries all around the world that have already got plans in place that work really well, the likes of Canada, you know, around logging. You know, the problem's probably already been solved. Just need to look elsewhere.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I was at the Wood Processing and Manufacturers Association conference 2 weeks ago, and we announced a significant investment to process the kinds of things that we're talking about with respect to slash locally, so that they're not sitting there, they're not waiting for the next rain to wash them down, that we can process. At the moment, only 40% of our timber is processed in this country. 60% of it is sent offshore and then processed, and we purchase it back by way of processed timber. It's just not good enough. So there are a number of, we had a couple of great speakers there with some science and technology about dealing with issues within forestry sector, about slash and about the way we utilize that land. And that's certainly where forestry is heading in this country. In fact, we don't even have to look offshore. There are a number of really awesome operators who have done great things. If you ever get the opportunity to go to Nelson and see Nelson pine and the way they grow and process their timber, despite all the heavy rains and the weather that's impacted the Nelson region, they don't have the same challenge that we've seen here on the East Coast. So we don't have to go too far.
Last year?
Yep.
The fire you took?
Yeah, they did. Yep, they did. But what we're not seeing is logs washing up on the beach like what we're seeing here. But I do agree, the landslips and the landslides, and particularly as you head over the back of Nelson, not good. But Nelson Pine have done a fantastic job. I've been there and seen it for myself. They've also got future plans on the way that they future-proof their forestry sector. But the point is, yes, there are some solutions offshore. There are lots of good ones here. And we will be looking to that entire forestry sector to come up with those answers. We don't have the answers ourselves.
Forestry companies have an obligation to replant. If they have to replant, how do you expect this problem to go away?
Well, if you look towards those who were planted under the P90 scheme, forestry, most of them as they come to their rotation, those leases, not all of them have been with a long view. For example, I know that a number of the Māori forests up on the East Coast have come to the end of their lease cycle. What we're saying is, don't negotiate a lease that looked like the last one. How do we support them to do that? Otherwise, we will end up back there. What we've also said in the past 3 years is that for those forest owners who are looking to re-indigenize their forests, we incentivize ways of going from 100% pine to every year as you harvest through your block, cutting it back by 15% to replant with indigenous forests. So there are lots of things happening in this space, but I do accept that some of those leases, they're still long running. What we need to do though is make sure that when those leases do come up, they're incentivized enough to say, we can't blanket plant like we've done in the past, and that report today shows that we can't.
Well, if, Bridget, yeah.
Do you think that the hill country farmers are also being incentivised to the same degree to plant up their, not just their strips on the creeks and streams on their farms and rivers, but also to retire land that might be better to be planted in native? And do you think that the inquiry has actually looked at that in enough depth and what's the support they go to the hill country farmers?
I don't think the report specifically looked into that into any great depth. I haven't yet read the 4 or 5 large appendices to come with the report yet, as they are due to drop in the next 7 days. But what I do know though is that under the leadership of the former Minister Shane Jones, that there were some incentivized mechanisms there for farmers to look towards putting some of their land blocks back into forestry. It was met with a bit of conjecture. It was a bit 50-50 on whether or not those either understood it completely or whether or not it was the right kind of incentive for farmers to even look at it. We've already said that we're going to review how those incentives look like for land utilisation. Now this report is very specific to this region, and I don't want to put all farm use or farmland across the country into the same boat, but I'm of the opinion that they're not incentivised enough to be able to look towards opportunities to do that with their land.
So I guess, well, thank you, Minister Hinari, just for, I guess, being able to be here. It has been all of a few hours since you've had that report, so I just want to thank you for acknowledging that you will come back to the region, and you know, no doubt we'll be able to have some more fulsome discussions based on both the report and the appendices, and perhaps the indication which ways that government will lead. I guess putting my hat on as the minister responsible for the cyclone recovery here, the findings of that report will become quite important in terms to the way we look at building back better or doing things quite differently in the region. So I am too very interested in seeing what that means for the way that we build back. So just to that point, Ngarimu, I'll bring you and Rena. These guys have been leading some of the work on our cyclone recovery plan. I've got a copy here if you want.
Kia ora, good afternoon. My name's Garrielle Parata, and as the Minister mentioned, I've been seconded back from the Reserve Bank to support Te Rau Kupenga as the Interim Regional Commissioner in Cyclone Recovery. The role of the Regional Commissioner and myself is to support both the Gisborne District Council's Recovery Office in communicating the messages from the region through to Minister Allen, who reports that to the Extreme Weather Related Events Cabinet Committee. That committee, Cabinet Committee, is chaired by the Minister of Finance, Grant Robinson, and I suppose that's why I've been seconded here from the Reserve Bank, because I'm used to writing briefings for the Minister of Finance every 2 to 3 weeks. So part of it is aligning or supporting the Recovery Office and delivering a message to the ministers, or to the Minister of Finance and the other ministers of that Cabinet Committee. The other thing I will say, the role of the Commission, Regional Commissioner, is to support the region. While predominantly we have been supporting the Gisborne District Council's Recovery Office, we have also opened that channel for the iwi to communicate their messages to Minister Allen to share at the EWR. I'd like to, if it's not extra work for Sandra, but feel free to, as a sector, communicate the messages that you want heard, passed on to the Minister, through to Sandra, and she can work with, pass those messages to us. We present those messages weekly to the Minister. So every Monday afternoon or Tuesday morning, we present those weekly updates from the Council and from iwi to the Minister, so she can present to the Cabinet Committee. So yeah, that's just an offer to all of you. The other thing that the Regional Commissioner's Office does is provide escalation points with government departments. So without us having to communicate to the Minister, to talk to her other ministerial colleagues, to direct the government department to do something, through the relationships that myself, the Commissioner, have in Wellington, is actually engaging with senior execs of government departments to move things on a little bit quicker, get a little bit more clarification for some of the concerns that people have presenting us with. And yeah, so that offer is open, that channel that is open as a regional recovery, regional commissioner to provide updates to the Minister is, we'd gladly open that to your sector to provide a cohesive message or communications, and we can pass those on to you, pass those on to the Minister and work with you going forward. So yeah, that's my role here, and I'll pass it over to Rena.
Kia ora, I'm Rena Kohere. I'm a coastie. My parents are Ray and Julie Kohere, who farm at Rangiata Station at East Cape Lighthouse. I'm here today as the Recovery Connector for the Office of Recovery Tairāwhiti. The shorthand for that is ORT, which is a terrible name, and I really hope we can come up with something better. So I'm here, actually I need to give apologies for Anita Redi-Huthusen, who is the Group Recovery Manager, which is a mandated role for recovery, and Rebecca Halbert, who is the Recovery Office Manager. They can't be here today, so I'm here in their stead. Minister Allen, Minister Henare and Ngarimu have kind of given that high-level overview of what's been happening in the region since the cyclone. I was really tempted to press for some facts and figures out of Minister Allen, and I might actually try again later, because that's pretty much the job of the Recovery Office. We serve a particular function under civil defence legislation, and I think we're all pretty comfortable with the idea of what civil defence response looks like in our region. We've had, I mean, I keep losing count, whether it's 6, whether it's 7, whether it's 9, whether it's 100 weather events in the last probably 2 years. So yeah, 7 and 18 months, says Ngarimu. Someone else will probably challenge that in this room. We know that Tairāwhiti has been in and out of a state of response. We are currently moving into a state of recovery. And what that means is that we have a recovery minister, and as a region we have an opportunity to pull together a recovery plan. So the Recovery Office is going to be working out of GDC, but will have eyes and ears and fingers in the pies of everything that is happening across Tairāwhiti, because we're very, very clear that this is locally led, regionally focused, but nationally supported for a recovery for our region. So a recovery plan looks like 4 different sectors. The most obvious one sitting here in this room is the economic sector. I know how important the primary industry is to our region. The other sectors are social, built infrastructure, and natural. And while it's really easy to pull apart those 4 aspects of recovery, we all know that they are completely interconnected. So this recovery plan will have a community-led focus. And we don't just mean communities by the places that we live. We mean communities by the industries that we are all part of, the school communities that we are part of, the sports clubs, and all the other different ways that we contribute to the well-being of Tairāwhiti. So the first work of the Office of Recovery was to pull together phase 1, and I need to be really clear about that this was phase 1 of a report that went to our minister to pitch for funding to support Tairāwhiti to begin the process of recovery. Trust Tairāwhiti largely led out the engagement with the primary industries, so they were engaging with fed farmers and beef and lamb and really utilising the information that farmers and growers were given the opportunity to feed into through the surveys that Trust Tairāwhiti were putting out. That was really brilliant at being able to capture a community voice and sort of quantify the cost that it's going to take for our region to recover from the cyclone, and to put an estimate on the support that we might need when we start to feel like we have an idea of how we're going to build back better, which is the tagline that the recovery has. So for phase 1, a bid was put through to Minister Allen, which will be put up to Cabinet, and we're still waiting to hear what the results of that will be. I will try and press for some figures later, but I don't think I'm going to have much luck.
Prepared the facts and the figures and the numbers for the report that I've got. So,
but I want to know what we're going to get from that before. That's what I'm going to be more
I can tell you. Your role is to advise me on what's required. My job is to go through the budget process by Patricia.
And so in order for the office to be effective, we need to be able to communicate with everyone across our community to find that information so that we're putting good information up to the minister so she can do the job, to work for it, to get it back here on the ground. I don't know if there are any questions or if I'll be able to address them. Yes.
And the first one, as a coordinator, I've got a challenge for you, and that is to coordinate all the fund holders, because you've got people like Federated Farmers, Rural Support Trust, Greenlee have donated money, Balance have donated money, Red Cross have donated, you've got the Mural Relief Fund, you've got Trust Tairāwhiti, all sitting on massive amounts of money. So my challenge to you is to coordinate all these people with all these funds to get in the same room and have a conversation about how you're going to divide it up. Because there will be some people who will get nothing, and there will be some people who will access all the funds and get a lot of money. So that's the first challenge. The second challenge is to the Mural Relief Fund and Trust Tairāwhiti. It is absolutely impossible to get any money. I've got people telling me every week they are making these applications. They make different applications every week. They all come back and want more information. These people are under the pump trying to rebuild their homes, their businesses, their livelihoods. And Trust Tairāwhiti want to be all things to all people in this district. And they ain't that now. And so is the Mural Relief Fund. So, to the people in the offices, you need to do your job better. I can't put it more bluntly and succinctly, because otherwise there's a lot of people who just have a guts for.
Thank you for sharing that. I think these are the hard conversations that we're actually going to have as a region. I can undertake to take those comments back to the relevant people. No, actually, yeah, thank you. I know everyone's been sitting in this room for a long time. This is one of the draftiest woolsheds that I've been in for a while. I can hear I can hear the refreshments being prepared. But to your first challenge, we have been working with the different agencies who have, up to probably now and probably quite regularly, work in silo. So people will have different relationships and different abilities to access funding or even identify the support that's out there. So we do have a coordinator whose role is, how would you describe your role, Amber? Case coordinator. So Amber's role to date has been getting in touch with people whose homes have been red stickered and yellow stickered. They've been identified as a priority group who need to have that clarity of messaging and that one sense source of truth. And I think that stands for every single region and community across Tairāwhiti, having a single voice, a single point that you can go to find out exactly what's happening. And equity is going to be a focus for recovery. Yeah, we know it's not just about building back to where we were prior to the cyclone, because in some cases that wasn't where it should have been. So it really is that tagline of build back better. Yeah. And I love that the minister's done a runner on me, so I'm left here holding the microphone. So I am going to pass over to Sandra. Yeah, the one with no power to make any decisions, but can hassle on your behalf. Kia ora.
Thank you so much for that. I'm seeing some of our ministry people need to get away. Clearly it's 5 o'clock or nearly. Thank you so much. I know there's planes to be caught and all the rest of it, but yeah, no, really appreciate. The great thing about this, of course, is that now you've got faces to the names. When you see people talking about, just a tagline at the bottom of a press statement or all the rest of it, these are people that are in our community looking out for us. So, with that in mind, we're going to just wrap up very quickly the sort of central government aspect of it with, I'm just going to ask Daljeet Cameron to stand up. Cameron, yeah. She is our MSD lead here, so thanks guys. So MSD have been quite instrumental in the background, just supporting the likes of Enhanced Task Force Green, helping us get some apprenticeships going and all of that sort of thing, so that generally we look at MSD and we go, oh, it's about providing job seeker benefits and the like, but in actual fact they've got an incredibly engaged team based out of Hawke's Bay. I think I'm correct in saying that Gisborne's a satellite of Hawke's Bay, and they are about getting people back into work, and they've used the never waste a good crisis, right? So they've used the events that occurred in February to put good people into good jobs. So that's going to continue, and we'll just keep thinking up great ideas for them, and they'll keep actioning them. And thank you very much, Del, for all of your time and your team. So for those of us in the room, of course, we are, whether we like it or not, intimately connected to MPI. So we've got, again, a team here on the ground, but I'm just going to ask a couple of the lead people here to just have a quick word about, again, this is going to be 10 minutes because they did read the brief, and unlike ministers, they believe in them. And they're just going to tell us a wee bit about, as I say, where they've come from and where they're going forward now.
Yeah, kia ora tātou. Richard Rātapu from Tokomaru Bay. Over the last, I was reflecting on Bridget's kōrero this morning on TV, very well said this morning. I watched 100 metres of my land flow down the Mangahouni River, and I watched the slips that happened up there. So part and parcel of how we're feeling and how we're moving through this journey that we're doing. I'm a senior advisor within our organisation, MPI, for customary issues. And I sort of got the short straw to come and talk to everyone. Apologies from Karen Adair, our director. So my role is to talk, I suppose, about where we've been. And I want to thank the ministers for filling in everyone for where we've been, because that's the work that we've been doing in MPI in our small unit here in Gisborne. We continue to liaise, and a great mihi to you, Sandra. You've been a big stick for us to lean on in times of hard, yeah, and a big stick to point us in the right direction to help all you people there. And that's been our role, to get as much information to you so you can carry on with your business. to try and assist you to access as much resources that we've got so you can carry on with your business. We've got a highly committed team, and the only way we could do this is to bring our whole team together and to assist everything that was happening through. No doubt over the next week we're going to get lots more information, and hopefully, as you said, Bridget, Putia, to help each one of you get through what we need to get through over the next couple of years. And no doubt, as Ngāramu said, we're going to be held accountable to ensure that you get the resources you need to do your job, and we get to the distance, we get to be able to do the things that we need to do. I'm going to hand over to Dennis, probably to talk about the intricacies of our pamphlets and different systems that we want to offer here, and where we're going. Kia ora.
Kia ora, thanks Richard. So I'm part of the on-farm support team. I'm actually out of Bay of Plenty, and we're awhiing this region because we are interconnected and we're interdependent, and we're here to support you. And I know in our past life, when we had droughts in the Waikato and Bay of Plenty, you guys looked after our stock. So we are interconnected. There's two things I want to talk about. The Rural Support Trust and Balance are running a series of field days, and there's pamphlets here, and we're supporting that. That's right up the coast, so that's an opportunity for you to engage directly with us. We want to hear about your stories. We want to talk about well-being. We want to see what good looks like, and we have 2 ears, 1 mouth, so we want to do a bit of listening. The other thing that we've got is the feed service that we've worked with Fed Farmers that stood up, so there's a whole lot of donated feed and grazing and bits and pieces available outside the region. That service is sitting there and available, and there's some contact details and on a one-pager here. So I'd encourage you to grab those and attend those events. Essentially what we want to do from the on-farm support team is talk to you, understand what's going on. There's a whole lot of challenge in and around land use, there's a whole lot of regulation, but front and centre is your goals and objectives and what you need to do or what you want to do and how we support. And I will say we are the Ministry for Primary Industries. That "for" is a key word, and we're here to support. And bearing in mind, here's some 2 big numbers that I'm quite passionate about. One is, as primary industries, we're responsible for something like 80 to 85% of export receipts. And to do that, there's about 400,000 people to deliver our goods overseas. So we're important, and every one of you is important, and none of you is too small, and none of you is too insignificant to be worth our while. So I want to encourage you to engage, and we are here to support.
I'll take the opportunity to introduce myself. Some of you I know. My name's Sarah Lawrence, and I work here at the Gisborne MPI team as the Regional Advisor in Rural Communities and Farming Support. Bit of a mouthful, but I sit around the table with Sandra Faulkner and co at the Rural Coordination Group. So just what Rena was talking about earlier with that recovery plan at MPI with the Rural Coordination Group, it's our job to put your primary sector and your rural lens basically over that recovery plan. So we have been working very hard during obviously the very early days when everybody was in crazy response. And as we move into this recovery, that's what we're sitting down working very hard for at the moment. So I'm based on Awapuni Road. I'm always out here with Sandra at the hub at meetings. My door is open. Anyone who wants to come to talk to me, that's where I am. And come grab my number if you want before you leave. I'm here. I've got ears, just like Dennis. But I am based here in Gisborne. So I just wanted to introduce myself to everybody.
Just want to mention that also we're still running a program of getting critical supplies into areas that are isolated. So we call it Operation Reach. So we've still got funding available if you've got critical supplies that you need to get into an area that is accessible. We've got funding to assist there. We're in the throes of winding up Operation Muster. I think we're almost through that. We're assisting people get animals off farm. Hopefully that's almost come to an end. So those are just a couple of things that we've been involved in and assisted organising. Any questions?
All right, so all of these people are here available, so we'll catch up with them over a bite to eat. Thank you so much. Cool. Now, one of our key sponsors for today, and something that I know we've all been involved in, insurance. So FMG, Annabelle and Greg. Yep, Annabelle, come on, you're up here too. Firstly, thank you so much to FMG for supporting our event today. And yeah, insurance, both EQC and FMG.
I should have had Minister Allen to talk to the EQC, but as it's more government related. But yeah, kia ora everyone, and thank you for allowing FMG to support this event and this community. And first of all, introduce Annabelle Gooley, one of our rural managers around here. Also, an apology from Hickey Swan, who isn't able to make tonight. I just want to acknowledge, we've got a small team in Gisborne, and Annabelle and Hickey have, I guess, had to front, a lot of difficult conversations, a lot of inquiries, and they're, doing an amazing job on behalf of us, and I thank them for that. So, thank you. And first, I'd like to acknowledge the challenges the Te Rāwhiti community face, and it's not just as a result of the cyclone. I think you've had multiple events over multiple years, and I've seen firsthand the damage of infrastructure, the damage of housing, the damage of crops, your productive assets, land, etc., and ultimately the impact it's had on your businesses. And we see the sort of insurable stuff, but that's only a small proportion of the uninsurable stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of work to do, as everyone's been saying today. I'm going to start with some industry level info and then provide an update from a FMG perspective. So I guess as a whole, the industry's under pressure, and I'm talking about the insurance industry. So there's been about 100,000 claims from the weather events across the North Island. And that, I guess, the industry doesn't have that surge capacity to deal with that level. So the sector is busy training, recruiting, importing the skills required to help get through this event from an insurance perspective. And I hope you can appreciate that takes time, and it's in a difficult, tight labour market currently. Of those 100,000 claims, that's probably worth somewhere between about $2.8 and $3 billion worth of loss, insurable loss, that will be paid out over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years to cover what's been lost. And also to put that into context, Cyclone Bowler cost about $390 million, inflation adjusted. This is estimated, as I said, to cost around $3 billion, so it's almost 10 times the size of Bowler. So, it's a big event. It's got broad geography and probably broader impacts on business. Nationally, Te Rāwhiti makes up about 2.5% of all the claims. So, so it's a small proportion of the claims, but significant to you here. With Hawke's Bay being the biggest provincial area that's impacted with about 15% of claims. What does that look like for FMG? And I guess we sort of talked about maybe false expectations, but about the EQC piece, and I'll talk briefly to that, but really just now sort of going to bring the FMG perspective to that. And I guess the first thing is to reinforce Minister Allen's comments that each region is really different from the impacts, whether that is around this area, whether that's Hawke's Bay, whether that's Northland, etc. So each region has quite a different view of how they've been impacted. So FMG has about 10,000 claims from this event, which is about obviously 10% of the national impact, and it's probably estimated to cost us at the moment somewhere between 250 and 300 million. Now, 95% of that will be paid by reinsurers, so that's what we have insurance for. That's about 50% more than our BAU demand, our business as usual demand. So just like the industry, the insurance industry is under pressure, so are we. And And for us, because of our rural roots, we have about 25% of all claims in the Hawke's Bay and about 25% of all claims in Tairāwhiti. So from talked about the industry, we make up 10% of the claims, but in those two regions, about 25%. In Hawke's Bay, we have about 4,000 claims in Hawke's Bay, which is about 40% of all our claims, and around 600 claims in Gisborne, so which is about 6%. So just give you that some context. As I said, we're under pressure. We are not, I guess, probably meeting the expectations of our clients when it comes to, just day-to-day contact, and our claims pressure is overflowing into our service, our service offering, which ultimately we're not satisfied with, and but I've got some updates on what we're doing about that. So what we have been doing, I guess initially to support Annabelle and Hickey and the local team, we mobilised our national network. We've got a lot of people on the ground to drive up driveways and both support the early claims process. We also had lots of people on the phone doing community check-ins, so we rang thousands of clients across the country to make sure they're okay and what we could do to help. We have outsourced some of our assessing resource. As I said, we don't also have the surge capacity to cope with that level of claims, so we're using third-party assessors. Now, while that I guess isn't ideal, it's the better of two evils in the fact that we can now pass on that assessment process. We've brought in extra staff, so just like we talked about every other sort of sector standing up a recovery unit, we've built a separate claims recovery process to deal with just the workload. So we're employing about 30 odd new people in our claims team to deal with this, so we can get back to our BAU while managing this as well. We're trying to streamline processes, so we can get I guess more money out the door. So while we have policy responses, we're trying to free them up. We have to work with our reinsurers on that because it's not our money we're spending. So we have to make sure that the processes and policies sort of fit, but also while being pragmatic about the results as well. And we've also set up a fund to support rural community recovery that the likes of Annabelle and others can access to support you. We're not fully resourced yet, so as I said, we're busy recruiting, we're busy training, and we're busy bringing people in. But what I am, I guess, pleased to say that we are paying about $1.5 million out per day in claims related to this event. We've paid out about $80 million so far. It's about 32% of what we estimate we'll have to pay out. So we are making traction. But I think probably but we've got a fair way to go, obviously. And we've paid out some of the easier stuff. As we get into this, it'll be more difficult, and probably just brings the EQC point in. It's the housing and the decisions around housing is the bit that's more complex, and the fact that we do have EQC involved, so there are still decisions being made. Is this a natural disaster or a flood? That impacts how policy responds, that impacts the role of government. Government is still making decisions about classification of land. Councils are still making decisions. So there is a lot in that housing space about decisions about reinstatement, rebuilding, etc., etc. So for those that, I guess probably not many here, but been through Christchurch, been through Kaikoura, all those things, that takes time. And then on top of that, even if the government, I think there might be some decisions coming this weekend, there will still be community consultation before that is nailed. So I just want to say that will take time. The housing piece will be the big piece that will take time. Yep, cool, nearly there. So what does all this mean? I think, just give you confidence, FMG is in a strong position to deal with this. We have a great relationship with our reinsurers, and I guess what we also know is that we're not satisfied. We're satisfied with the progress we've made. but we're not satisfied with our service standards, and we're working hard to get on top of things. And I guess what that looks like from your perspective, if you happen to be with us, is that you may have some inconsistencies. Experience that, so we want to put that right. Thank you. Yes.
About flooded houses, that you mentioned a 3 to 5 year period. So if we're sitting there with a flooded house or accommodation or something, what's your expectation of turnaround from when the people have looked through to when we could expect something to get nailed into the house or pulled down? What would your expectation be? Because I know what my expectation would be.
No, the 3 to 5 years, well, I guess where we have difficulty is when expectations aren't matched. So we have still, and I'm talking about not just FMG, but have claims sitting with Kaikoura. So, and with actually Christchurch earthquake. So if everything goes, once we get the land use, the decisions from government, and we have reports from our assessors, that should be relatively quick. It's the decision around, are you allowed to rebuild on that land? Does it need to be lifted? Does it require new engineering? All those types of things, as the things take time. But provided it's simple, it would be within months. Yes. Any other questions?
Yep. All right, we're going to do this with no legs because I know everyone's really cold. All I was going to suggest is for this next section, it's about events coming up. So between Moving Man and Port New Zealand, there's a whole bunch of support coming out, well, events coming up. And yeah, so Mark's going to release support on Moving Man and what we've got coming up here for the pastoral sector and then Port New Zealand as well. Some bigger events. So, few minutes. Any minutes? Five.
You shut up.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, thanks. It's really good. I was last here on February 10, feeling shitty out after Halloween and holidays, so it's really good to be back. Check your front gate, I feel it's still there, and I went past today. It's good getting out and look around the old district. I don't look around. Whatever you want, we'll try and run. Okay? So I know Parley's been busy doing stuff. We just met the mention of the RSP balance, we're actually supporting that too. That got put down yesterday. I know Eastland Beach, for example, put something together around words and stuff, and we're looking at stuff further out with whatever you need in each area. So if you want us to come in, we said it's been pretty personal. I was back on my old place, and there's a few grey hairs around here been through this before. And there's plenty of expertise that are around for us to utilise. I think one of the best people around silt and slip damage in the country is sitting right there in our district. So we've got a really good program on TV the other night, Sue. You did bloody well. Far better than Hilton and I ever could. But they're the sort of things we want to put together in collaboration. Our business as usual here hasn't been running field days and stuff due to Garrielle. I've been tied up the other end working with Sandra on the phone a bit, doing similar stuff with the team that we've got running in Hawke's Bay. We want to be driven by what you want, not what we think you should know. So it's up to you to get a hold of us. Richard Schofield had to bugger off because he's got an interviewing this thing, but he's on the Farmer Council exec. You've got Shanna over here who's on it as well. Then you've got Sandra Matthews in this immediate region. If you're from Wairoa, we've got Nuku Hadfield, and we have got Guy Roney on the council, a little bit further, Max, who's a real victim down at Tutera. So we've just got to be driven by you, what you want, and a lot of the stuff we think you're going to want, we think we've got resources going to help, and it's definitely people who experience.
Sorry, quick question, sorry. I don't like just introducing myself to the crowd, and when you say that, I've got an advocacy service and we've been going for 3 years for men's mental health. What do I have to do to get funding, and who do I have to talk to for funding? Because I've seen 400 families since the cyclone, predominantly rural, and I had 3 phone calls this afternoon. So if there's anyone in this room that can direct me to that, that would be amazing, because that's all I want on behalf of my community that I work for.
let's have a yarn straight ahead.
I would love to have a yarn because I'm speaking on behalf of the boy that's hiding in the sharing shed if they're helping out. So that would be great. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you.
So coming out.
Yeah, I would, you know, because it's a great concern. Like I go to these meetings, but nothing can be done if the mental health of our community is not looked at. So sorry to interfere, but really want to get it.
We'll
hear from Vicky Croswell in a moment, but I just want to let Mark in very quickly and then go to your.
So to me, it's about collaboration working with others, and that's why we're starting to see a lot of people popping up doing stuff in the meeting with it. If we can help out, say now, we don't want 10 events running by 10 different people in the same place within a couple of weeks. If you guys are busy enough out there, I know what it's like. Busy out there trying to do your stuff. So that pretty much for me, Sandra. Yeah, just we're here. I've come through. It's my first trip back to home. It's where I come from. We're back on the ground. That bridge is opening up on Sunday. You just let us know what we can do to help out with. So the key point for me is two things. You're looking pretty green and good out there at the moment. Just make sure you adjust it to get through the winter. Allowing if you've got damage on your fences and stuff. And thinking about your water, if you've got dams and shit full now, getting ready for summer. It might be letting some go and just getting one in each area that you've got control of. We visited a couple of farms today where we're down to 7 blocks. And I remember doing that too when you might have 50 paddocks. It's about thinking about what get us through the summer. So get through the winter, set up the summer. Okay? We're here, whenever you are.
Thank you, Mark.
And yeah, we're pleased to support today.
Sorry.
With your levies.
My apologies, yeah. Mark came through very much so with the support for this afternoon, so thank you, Mark. I do apologise for that.
G'day guys, my name's Alex and I have one speak on throat rubbish, so everyone's being sore bum and cold. So I'm a port consultant. I've been working with Trust Marketing. I've been working with Port New Zealand. I'm a business manager for the squash industry in New Zealand as well. Just what Port New Zealand's asked me to say a few things. All I can probably sum it up is I've been talking to growers. Some growers have been pulling their harvesters out with their diggers. Growers are seeing half the yields or less. Their land's being destroyed because the weather. What Port New Zealand is doing is we're talking to government. We're we're understanding, we're listening to you, and we're really pushing things through. We're putting a lot of focus into the media. Some of that media has gone to television and newspapers throughout New Zealand. So I'm not going to say anything more. We're going to have a growers update on the 21st at Bushmere Arms. I'm going to be talking to Sandra about that. We can push it through to you guys. I'm all about collaboration, and I wanted to thank Sandra for allowing me to have a 10-minute window, but I'm cutting it out into about 2. But I just wanted to say thanks to Sandra. But look, Port New Zealand is doing a huge amount of work behind the scenes. My background's packing squash. I haven't been involved with government before, with Wellington before, but what I'm extremely encouraged is seeing a lot of passionate people behind the scenes working for the horticulture growers here in Kapiti. So I'm very encouraged that way. But we'll update you further on the 21st. Okay, you're most welcome to come. I'll keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Elliot. Okay, so there's just a couple of ladies that I do want to just a couple of moments of your time. Vicky Croswell. So Vicky is the Rural Support Trust Coordinator. She came into the role on the 6th of March, post-cyclone, and I'm amazed that she's still here. So Vicky, thank you so much. I work alongside Vicky pretty much every day. I'm in awe of her. So Vicky, and the other person I do just want to have stand up and come and join us for a moment. She'll probably scoot away and sit down again, is Lucy Bond. Now Lucy is going to be the coordinator for our recovery in this region. So if you need stuff done, or you want to help out, Lucy's going to be your girl. So it gives me a shot. She's going to do a whole bunch of heavy lifting for us. So welcome. First day today. Welcome, Lucy. Thank you so much.
Today, walked into the meetings today.
Yeah.
I'm really passionate and I'm happy to be here. Yeah, just call me. My number is plastered everywhere.
Or call me and I'll be here.
Yeah, because Faith said I was helping coming into the region and distributing it out. That was really simple. Nothing else farming on board there, so that's been cool. And Sandra gave me a phone call and said, hey, do you want to do a little bit more? And I jumped at it because the one thing when I've been on the phone, people going, hey, we need some feed, is, oh, how do we do this, and how do we get hold of this, and how do we get this, how do we get people out here to help? And now I've had that opportunity arise, and now I can jump in it and for you guys, get the help you need, come out and see you guys, get what you need on hand, and just get a bit of a plan in place in regards to winter and coming into summer, and just get things ticking over and get things moving for you guys. So yeah, call me. If you don't have the number over here until we finish, so come and get it. Otherwise, one of the lovely ladies that have been here at Hilton that have been here almost like we have it by the end of the day. So yeah, it's out there. Get in touch.
Lucy, so yes. Who are you actually working for?
For the Rural Coordination Group, so it's a community developer of, and believe me, I really have to do that.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay. Thank you. I'm going to leave you close with some thoughts for us, and then we're going to enjoy a dinner together. Sponsored very kindly by Beck and Lee.
I put in one, as Sandra said, quickly from the Rural Sport Trust Whanakati. So the 6th of March, I came from Victim Support New Zealand Police, jumped over the fire pin into the fire, one the same. Just a bit about what we do is we support farmers in adverse event. If it's in peacetime, I really don't know because I don't know what peacetime is about currently at the moment. We have got, as lovely Dennis has already put it out there, RST running some information gatherings up the coast next week. The following week we'll be down here on the flats. So please we encourage any farmer in those coast regions to come along. Have a corridor, and what has RST been up to since I've started? Currently at the moment I've been bringing facilitators in from out of town, and we've been walking up driveways of isolated areas and farming communities. Honestly, Noah's, I can't give it to you because there's so many people that we've made contact with. What can we do for you? Basically, we can sit down and chew fat. If you've got any concerns, we help you work those out. Wellness is at the forefront for us. So if anyone has any concerns, we can sit down, work out a plan, put actions together, and if need be, we have some awesome clinical psychologists and counsellors that have offered their services, some free of charge, that are available to anyone who needs them. Some of you would have, from the Ngāti area, a couple of Fridays ago, we ran an off-muster evening, and that is to bring farmers like yourself, lifestylers, off the farm and mingle with people in your community. We're going to be running another 5 or 6 of those through the Roki between the end of now and the end of June, August, I guess, weather dependent. So please look out for those. If you're on our Facebook page, please like that so you can follow where we're going.
Hi, sorry, can I just add, if you are going to run some of those events, is it possible to run advertising? My family were taken to attend this meeting tonight because they're from Garrielle, but they have to get across the river on a flying landline cage boat, and they have to do that during the daytime. And that's going to be their life for the next few months. So
sure.
Can you kind of something perhaps be run during midday or something so that.
So our balanced ones are kicking off at 10:30 in the morning. to cater for for people who are busy. So we've got a couple of times running throughout the day, so a good point, thank you. Also, Mark from Beefland, we were out today with Sarah from MPI, and I have in here somewhere a facilitator, Rod. Just driving around, as Mark said, going out and catching up with some people just to check in and for Mark to, I guess, go through his old stomping grounds. So it was good to go with someone who had the knowledge. I know I came back very more knowledgeable than when I went out, so thank you for that, Mark. Thank you to everyone who has made contact and reached out for help. Please remember to take time out for yourself, that's what it's about. Please check on your neighbours, that's really, really important. And please don't be afraid to ask for help, that's what we're here for. So, Sandra, thank you, he's a great office mate. But again, thank you to everyone who's taken the time out today to be here. I know it's getting cold, everyone wants a drink and a bit of a corridor. Please, if anyone wants to have a yarn, Rod, are you out somewhere? Oh, so Rod is kindly donating his time to Kairapati. He's come over from Cambridge to give me a hand. So please just shoulder tap him if anyone needs to put a corridor tonight. So thank you and go well.
Thank you, Ricky, and don't be put off by Richard's very deadpan, very professional man. He's got the darkest, most evil sense of humour I've ever heard. So, if you come to the hub, you are likely to hear peals of laughter, and it's not because we don't take things seriously, it's just that she's outrageous. So, that said, I know that it's going to be a long winter. We all know that. With that in mind, I want to assure all of you that this is an ongoing effort for those of us that are working on your behalf. So please join us for a bite to eat and drink, and please share what you've heard here with the people around you, because we are all in this together, and each of us has a part to play. So thank you very much, go well, go safely, and we